Hi everyone, and welcome to Stop Hitting Yourself. After a 3-week delay, patch 2.7 is finally here and has put an end to what seemed like a permanent Ayaka banner.
This too is a form of eternity.
So rude!
That means the new banners are up and Yelan, a 5-star Hydro Bow user, has been added to the game. Her signature weapon, Aqua Simulacra, has also been added, and in this video we'll be testing it as well as a variety of other weapon options. So, let's hit it. First, let's go through the key points of the new Hydro Heroines kit, to give a bit of context as to why I've picked certain weapons to test for her. After spending 5 seconds out of combat, she will enter a breakthrough state. This will cause her next charge shot to have 80% decreased charging time and fire a breakthrough barb that will deal AoE hydro damage. The key thing to note is this scales off of her max HP and not her attack. Her elemental skill, Lingering Lifeline, has tap and hold variations. Tapping it will cause her to dash forward, dealing hydro damage to enemies in her path. Holding the skill will put her into a swift movement mode where she can mark enemies with her lifeline. At the end of the duration, the lifeline explodes, dealing hydro damage to each marked enemy. This also scales on her max HP and, like her dice motif, you'll notice this is a consistent theme. It's also fair to say that the additional mobility her skill provides could help you get out of some dicey situations. Yelan's Elemental Burst Depth Clarion dice has a 70 energy cost and creates an exquisite throw to aid her in battle. This follows her or the active character if you switch to another party member and deals a coordinated attack whenever they use a normal attack. This can be triggered every second and hits enemies 3 times. Once again, you guessed it, this scales off of her max HP. For her Ascension passives, the first increases Yelan's HP based on the number of different elemental types in the party. The second increases the active character's damage when her burst is active. This starts at a 1% buff and increases by 3.5% every second to a maximum of 50%. The conclusion we can draw from all this is that attack will be useless on her, so you should look to build HP alongside the normal crit rate and crit damage substats. Also, with an energy cost of 70 for her elemental burst, and a kit that indicates she should probably be an off-field sub-DPS, she would likely need a decent amount of energy recharge as well. My Yelan is level 90 at C0 and has 8-8-10 for her talents. She will have a 2-piece Heart of Depth artifact set for 15% hydro damage bonus, and 2-piece Tenacity of the Millelith artifact set for 20% HP equipped throughout the video. I'm using various combinations of the artifacts on screen as well as crit rate food on occasion to balance out the build for each weapon and make testing as fair as possible. With that said, please keep in mind these are the best artifacts I had at the time of recording that I felt would best take advantage of her kit. As time goes on, it's possible the community will find different, more optimal combinations to use. One more thing to note is that Yelan's second Ascension passive will keep increasing her damage while on field. For consistency's sake, the figure I'll be tracking is her burst damage without this buff. First, let's look at the only 3-star weapon on the list, an R5 Slingshot. As already mentioned, attack is not needed for Yelan, so even if Slingshot has the lowest base attack, what's more important is the substat and weapon passive. At level 90 it gives a solid 31.2% crit rate, and the passive increases her charge attack damage by 60% as long as you fire it from close to point blank range. R5 Stringless is the first of the 4-star weapons and provides a 48% increase to elemental skill and burst damage. The 165 elemental mastery substat is unfortunately not as useful. It's okay for electrocharge comps, but it's not really possible to ensure she is consistently the one triggering the reaction. For vape comps, it's highly likely she will just be applying the Hydro Aura for a Pyro team member to vaporize. Next up is an R5 Favonius Warbow. This provides the highest energy recharge substat, and the weapon passive provides additional white energy particles. This can be triggered every 6 seconds when Yelan deals a crit hit, but she must be on field for the effect to occur. This is definitely more of a support weapon, as the additional particles are a good benefit for the whole team. By comparison, Sacrificial Bow has the lowest energy recharge substat, but at R5 it has an 80% chance to reset the cooldown of Yelan's elemental skill. As well as a damage increase, this means you are also generating additional hydro energy particles, so her energy recharge requirement won't be as high. R5 Skyward Harp is the first of the 5-star weapons. Now, I know what you're thinking, but this was honestly mostly down to luck. Whether it was good or bad luck is a matter of perspective, as the refinements came from failing to get what I was actually rolling for. Skyward Harp has a decent 22.1% crit rate substat, and at R5 also gives 40% crit damage from the passive. It's a good weapon for raw stats, but Yelan can't take advantage of its high base attack. Next is an R1 Elegy for the End. This has a 55.1% energy recharge substat, and the weapon provides a 20% attack and 100 elemental mastery buff for the whole team. This doesn't do much for Yelan's personal damage, but it would be good for a support build, particularly in a vaporized team comp. R1 Polar Star provides a 33.1% crit rate substat and a mixed weapon passive. The first effect gives 12% elemental skill and burst damage increase, which is pretty good. The second effect gives you a separate stack when doing a normal attack, charged attack, using your skill or using your burst. This gives a 48% attack buff at max stacks, but as we've mentioned, Yelan doesn't need attack. Finally, we have her signature weapon, an R1 Aqua Simulacra. This gives a massive 88.2% crit damage from the substat, as well as 16% HP and a 20% buff to all damage from the passive. The only caveat is that the opponents must be nearby for the buff to be active, but it does work on and off field, which is great. Now let's look at the overall results. Unsurprisingly, Aqua Simulacra came out on top, so this is definitely her best weapon. If I ignore energy recharge requirements and buff her damage even further with Raiden and Kazuha, you can see her burst damage with this weapon is pretty impressive. However, unless you're very lucky, trying to get it from the weapon banner can be an expensive endeavour, so think carefully before rolling for it.
It's a trap!
Stringless actually performed better than I was expecting it to, and is definitely a good 4-star option if you have it. What I will say is without an energy recharge or crit substat, it will potentially make artifact farming much harder. In my opinion, any of the energy recharge weapons will probably be a better option, as they should allow you to use an HP Sands, which has a big impact on Yelan's damage. Sacrificial Bow would be my first choice out of these, as another use of her elemental skill is extra damage, and the additional particles further reduces her energy needs, especially at C0. I think Skyward Harp and Polar Star both suffered here, as I needed to use an energy recharge Sands. With different artifacts they could probably perform better, but honestly if you have either of them, I would use them on other characters. Finally, while Slingshot was the worst performer, I still think it's a good free-to-play option. Its damage isn't so far behind it's unusable, and it's something everyone should have access to. Thanks for watching the video. If you're thinking of pulling for Yelan, or you already have her and are wondering what weapon to use, hopefully this gave you some ideas of what might work for you. If you enjoyed the content, please consider leaving a like and a comment. You can also subscribe to the channel to get notified about future videos. You've been watching Stop Hitting Yourself. Until next time.